Assalamualaikum and good morning to each and everyone, especially to you, ma'am. So for our today's report, we are going to discuss about the measures of dispersion in statistics. So typically, this is a section 4.2 about what our teacher gave to us. So the first topic was the 4.1 measures of central tendency that is reported by our fellow classmate who is Kenta. So proceeding to my task, which is the measures of dispersion. So, measures of dispersion is a measures of variability of a set of data number that conveys the idea of the spread for the data set. So, measures of dispersion have three statistical values, which is the range, standard deviation, and the variance. So, these three statistical values will help us to measure the spread or dispersion of a certain data. So, the first statistical value that we are going to discuss is the range. So, range is the difference between the greatest data value and the least data value. So, in this statistical value, we are just going to subtract, or from the word difference, we are going to subtract the highest data value or the greatest data value to the least data value. Meaning, magmaminus lang tayo or imaminus natin yung pinakamalaking number sa pinakamaliit na number para makuha natin yung range ng isang data or ng isang given data. So, for example, meron tayong given example dito from our module. So, example number 1, find the range of the numbers of ounces dispensed by machine 1. So, as you can see, ito yung number of ounces dispensed by machine 1. So, ang gagawin natin, we are going to find or hahanapin natin yung pinakamalaking number or the greatest number and the lowest number of ounces dispensed dyan. So, as you can see, the greatest number of ounces dispensed there is 10.07, while the least number is 5.85. So, ngayon, isa-subtract natin yung greatest number, which is the 10.04, to the least number, which is the 5.85. So, 10.04 minus 5.85 is equals to 4.22. So, therefore, the range of the number of ounces dispensed in machine 1 is 4.22. Or, ang range ng ating given data is 4.22 ounces. Okay, so let's try another example for the machine 2. So, like we used to do in the machine 1, we are also going to get the highest value there, which is the 8.03, and the least value is 7.45. And then subtract 8.03 minus 7.45 is equals to 0.08. So, therefore, the value of our range in machine 2 is 0.08 ounces. So, now, let's proceed to the second statistical values of the measures of dispersion, which is the standard deviation. So, standard deviation is a measures of how the spread out numbers are. So, we have two formulas in standard deviation, which is this for the standard deviation of the population formula and this for the standard deviation of the sample formula. So, sabi dyan, most statistical applications involve a sample rather than a population, which is the complete set of data values. So, sample standard deviation are designated by the lowercase letter x, and in those cases in which we do work with the population by this symbol. So, this symbol is a Greek letter called sigma. So, for solving it daw, we can use the following procedure to calculate the standard deviation of the n numbers. But before we proceed on solving the standard deviation, let us define the variance first kasi standard deviation and variance are connected, okay? Yung variance at saka yung standard deviation connected yan sila para dire-diretso na tayo sa solving. So, for the variance is for a given data set that the square of the standard deviation of the data, or variance is the square of the standard deviation. So, we also have two formulas in variance, which is this for the variance of the population formula and this for the variance of the sample formula. So, ang kaibahan lang nila is yung symbol kasi variance is the square of the standard deviation. So, dito sa formula ng variance is meron lang square, which is yung 2 compared sa standard deviation. Okay? So, yun lang yung pagkakaiba nila. Okay, so now let's proceed to the procedure for computing standard deviation. So, number 1, we need to determine the mean of the n numbers first. Number 2, for each number, calculate the deviation or the difference between the number and the mean of the numbers. Number 3, calculate the square of each deviation and find the sum of this square deviation. Number 4, if the data is a population, then divide the sum by n. And if the data is a sample, then divide the sum by n minus 1. And number 5, find the square root of the quotient in number 4. So ngayon, magsosolve tayo and we will apply those procedure for computing a standard deviation. So the following numbers were obtained by sampling a population. So these are the numbers, which is the 2, 4, 7, 12, and 15. So first, we are going to find the mean of our given data set. So paano kinukuha yung mean? So i-add lang natin yung given data set and divide by the number of the given data set. So 2 plus 4 plus 7 plus 12 plus 15 divided by 5. So saan nanggaling yung 5? Okay, so kung gaano daw karami yung given data set natin, yun din ang number ng i-divide natin sa kanila. Okay, so 2 plus 4 plus 7 plus 12 plus 15 divide 5. So that is 40. So 40 divide 5. So the result is 8. So ibig sabihin, the value of our mean is 8. Okay, and for the step 2, we will compute the variance since this is a sample. So we are going to use this formula for getting the variance of the sample data. Okay, so now we are going to subtract. So isa-isa natin gagawin. So start tayo sa 2 and isa-subtract natin sa nakuha natin mean, which is the 8, and then squared plus yung kasunod 4 minus 8 squared plus yung pangatlo 7 minus 8 squared plus yung pang-apat 12 minus 8 squared plus 15 minus 8 squared all over. So since this is an n minus 1, substitute natin yung number of data, that is 5 minus 1. And after that, using our scientific calculator, so the result for our numerator is 118. And ang denominator na lang natin ngayon is magiging 4. Bakit? So yung n minus 1, since 5 sila, minus 1, so that is 4. So therefore, our variance is 29.5. So ngayon, to get the value of our standard deviation, since it's a sample data, we are using this formula. We will simply get the square root of our answer sa variance natin. So, square root lang natin yung variance para makuha natin yung standard deviation natin. So, square root of 29.5, so that is 5.43. So, ganyan lang ang pagkuha ng variance and standard deviation. So, una, kukunin muna natin yung mean value natin. And then, you can decide what formula you will going to use. Since sa problem na to, sample yung given data set natin. So, therefore, ito yung ginamit nating formula. Okay, so after that, pagkakuha ng variance, kunin nyo lang yung square root ng variance nyo and then that is your standard deviation. So, another example. So, for example, in this situation, so paano ba natin maa-apply si standard deviation? So, a consumer group has tested and sample of 8 size D batteries from each of 3 companies. The result of the tests are shown in the following table. So, according to this test, which company produces batteries for which the values representing hours of constant use have the smallest standard deviation. So, here is the result of the test. So, for the Ever So Bright company, the given hours of constant use per battery is this. So, meron tayong 8 batteries, which is the 6.2, 6.4, 7.1, 5.9, 8.3, 5.3, 7.5, and 9.3. And for the second company, which is dependable, 6.8, 6.2, 7.2, 5.9, 7.0, 7.4, 7.3, and 8.2. And for the third company, we have 6.1, 6.6, 7.3, 5.7, 7.1, 7.6, 7.1, and 8.5. So, ngayon, kukunin natin yung standard deviation ng bawat company. Okay, so first company is yung Ever So Bright. So, paano natin kukunin yung standard deviation? Okay, so of course, kunin muna natin yung mean or ng average nila. Okay, so add lang natin yan and then divide by 8. So, the answer is 7. So, after natin makuha yung value ng batteries or ng mean value natin, so proceed tayo sa pagkuha ng standard deviation. Okay, so direct na natin. So, ilagay na natin yung square root niyan. So, isa-isa nating isa-subtract sa mean value natin, which is 7. So, 6.2 minus 7 squared plus 6.4 minus 7 squared plus 7.1 minus 7 squared plus 5.9 minus 7 squared hanggang sa dulo 9.3 minus 7 squared all over 7. So, bakit 7 na lang to? Since this is a sample, so bawasan natin ng 1. 8 minus 1, kaya naging 7. So, after that, gamit tayo ng calculator. So, the result is 12.34. So, square root of 12.24 divided by 7, so that is 1.33 hours. So, sa unang company natin na Ever So Bright, our standard deviation is 1.33 hours. So, next, sa pangalawang company naman, yung Dependable. So, same process. Add muna natin para makuha natin yung mean value natin, divided by 8. So, the mean value is 7. So, same dun sa unang company. And after that, substitute natin para makuha natin yung standard deviation nito. So, 6.8 minus 7 squared plus 6.2 minus 7 squared hanggang sa dulo, 8.2 minus 7 squared. So, divided by 7. So, using your calculator, the result is 3.62 over 7. And then, get the square root, and the result is 0.72 hours. Okay? So, sa pangalawang company natin is 0.22 hours. So, now, proceed na tayo sa pangatlong company natin. Okay? So, again, add muna natin yan sila, and then divided by 8. Then, substitute natin sa formula natin. So, from the start, minus natin sila dun sa mean value natin, which is also 7. So, 6.1 minus 7 squared plus hanggang dun sa dulo, yung 8.5 minus 7 squared, divided by 7. So, the result is 5.38. So, 5.38 divided by 7. So, that is 0.88 hours. So, you can check your answer using your scientific calculator. Okay, so nakuha na natin yung standard deviation ng bawat company natin. So, ngayon, i-compare natin sila. So, sa Ever So Bright, yung standard deviation natin is 1.33 hours. And then, sa Dependable, we have 0.72 hours. And then, sa pangatlo, is 0.88 hours. Okay, so ngayon, kung sino daw yung may pinakamababang standard deviation, yun ang panalo. Okay, so the batteries from Dependable have the smallest standard deviation. So according to this result, the Dependable company produces the most consistent battery with regards to life expectancy under constant use. So meaning, ang Dependable company ang panalo for having a smallest standard deviation. Okay, so that is how we apply a standard deviation. So that's all for my report. Shukran and wassalam.